right. So, why don't you clap if you think I look like I might be Greg's brother? That's right. I know all white guys look the same. I know. That's what I hear it all the time. Now, let me see. I want to try to get to know anybody here from Puerto Rico? Anybody? Let's hear it. All right, good. We got a few. Excellent, because I'm going to talk a lot about Puerto Rico. I was there for a week last week doing some great stuff. Anyone here from Puerto Rico? Any Cubans here? That was the quietest Cuban woo ever. Good job. I know Gabby. Hey, Gabby, how are you? That's good. And my wife. So I'm half Cuban. I was born and raised in North Carolina. I went to college. I met a Cuban girl, and I moved to Miami. So now I'm half Cuban. So that's how it happened in my life. That's why I'm here. Like Greg, I love Miami. I love being here, and I love seeing. I love your church. I think it's so great what you guys are doing here and how you are a light in the city, and it's so fresh and cool. It's just a great place to be. I love how you sing. The band sounds great. I enjoy it so much. I'm so glad. How many of you love to wear pineapple shirts? I've already seen. I have a couple friends here. That's good. I love to do it as much as I can too. So this is one of my favorite shirts because I test your cognitive skills and your linguistic skills because it's a riddle in a picture. And so I always check to see. So maybe by the end of the service, you'll know what his shirt means. But some people catch it right away. Other people are like, I don't get it. Pineapple coffee, it doesn't make sense. So now, before I just start rambling too much, I do want to get into what I would love for you to receive today from God's Word. And like I was saying a minute ago, we just spent a team from our church, about 20 of us went to Puerto Rico. We spent a week there. We've been going every year for 3 years now since Hurricanes Maria and Irma went through and just created so much havoc and just destroyed so much life was taken away and so much, destruction happened. And so we've been going every year. And every year we see something new progress, new steps taking forward, new things happening. And it's such a joy to see growth. And then to be able to be a part of it. To go and to put your hands in there and to build things and to take care of things and to donate and to do things like that. How many of you have ever been on like a short-term mission trip like that? You've traveled for 3 days or a week or something to a foreign country to be a help, to be good, awesome, great to see that many of you. That's such a beautiful experience to do. And you really begin to understand like what the church is when you do something like that. When you go and like we were cutting grass like crazy. And I'm like, I wouldn't cut grass at my house, It would be like, no, someone else, But when you go there and you immerse yourself like kind of into the problem, into what's happening, what's not right, you then find this new strength. You find this new desire to be a part of a solution, to be a part of the light. And the phrase that we would use is la luz que no se apaga. It's the light doesn't turn off. It doesn't go out. Okay? Because that really embodied to us what we would do is you would go and you would talk to people and they would be like, we didn't have power for 9 months. We didn't have power for a year. And we're just like, how do you live without power for that long? It seems impossible, right? I mean, when Irma came through here, what did you have? 3 days, 10 days? And like we were ready to riot, It was like, this isn't right, 10 days without power. Can you imagine 9 months, a year, just kind of figuring out, hey, what is life like now? And surviving it and making it happen and becoming community and things like that. So you see these great stories. And then we would serve in 4 different orphanages, some up in a mountain town called Aguas Buenas, which is the further away from San Juan you get, the more kind of desperate the poverty was or the damage was because it got further away from the resource there. So we would go up on this mountain and we served different orphanages there. And it would just be amazing the light you would see. Whether it would be in the children that we would collect school supplies and create book bags, and we would go and we put new mattresses for them and paint their rooms. And when you give them, like a book bag full of things, like what we're doing in the back here. And you realize, and their face just lights up. They just get excited. And they're just so happy to get such a little gift that we would take for granted, right? In fact, probably maybe our children, when school supply season comes around, is like, no, don't have school start. I mean, some of you might get excited about it, but a lot of them are like, no, don't do this to me. I don't want school supply. But they just get so excited. You see this joy in their face, and you see that when you go there and you look at the situation, you're like, wow. So here I have orphans in a home, in a place that has been wrecked by a hurricane. And it's something as small as the light of giving school supplies could bring joy, could bring excitement. That's a light that doesn't go out. There's something special about that, isn't there? There's something that teaches us about the human resilience, the ability to endure past struggles, endure past tragedy, to find joy and hope and life and light beyond the circumstances that would tell us you shouldn't be able to have joy. You shouldn't be able to have light. You shouldn't be able to smile because look at these things that aren't going well for them. And yet somehow there's a light that does not turn out. And then you would meet these great heroes of just people. This lady, Damaris, who runs a home for boys. And you see she gives her entire life to that. To make the children that are lost, the orphans that are drifting or being abandoned or abused or left somewhere, to come and make them her own children. But realizing that's for a short amount of time, to love them as much as she can for a short amount of time, because at any moment a family member will come and say, we have a place for them, and then that child is taken back into its family. Sometimes a great situation, sometimes not. But in her position, she can do nothing but love them while she has them, and then watch them go when they have to go. And you look at someone like this, and you see such a light, such a thing that encourages you, and you realize, wow, that's amazing. And to see her endure to give that much love while at the same time trying to overcome financial struggles of trying to run a home, having to lose her own husband, and then trying to continue running the home on her own. And you see that strength, that light of how could someone still have that ability? When you get this opportunity to venture in these lives, you see that there is a light that doesn't go out. But I imagine the same thing happens in your life, maybe at different scales, maybe at different times of life. I don't want to try to take you down into memories of bad experiences in our life, but all of us at some point or another will experience a time where we think it is so dark it can never be better. Some of you maybe have gone through a broken marriage or a divorce. And in that moment of that experience, you thought, my life can never be whole again because this is happening. Some of you have buried a loved one. And the pain of it was so hard then that you thought, I'll never be able to be happy again. How could I? Because of how much loss I have. We've experienced all kinds of things from different health or tragedies or financial loss. All these things come to us at some point. And in that moment, the darkness feels so dark that it can never be overcome. And yet here you are today, right? A new light is in your life. You are valuable to the people around you. You have purpose in God. You know that He has something for you. You are encouraged, and you have found joy. You have found a way to be able to celebrate, to be able to be thankful and find gratitude. Somehow, the light did not go out. I want us to understand a little bit why that is the case by looking in the book of John. John chapter 1. Now, I know you have Bibles there for you, or some of you might have your own or use an app. But we are going to read about 7 verses in John, and we're going to stay right there. I'll jump to one verse, but it'll be on the screen. But if you just say, all right, we're in John chapter 1, I'd love for you to physically see what this message is, so that later when you read God's Word, you can go right back to that idea. John chapter 1, verse 4 I'm just going to kind of skip to there just to keep it moving a little bit. But if you guys do me a favor, if you can highlight in your Bible, or if you're like, oh, I don't want to mark up the church's Bible, but maybe you just will do me a favor when we ever get to the word light, because that's the word we're going to focus on today, light. I'm just going to ask you to say it for me, okay? So we're going to read it, and then I'm going to have you participate with me. So it goes like this, verse 4. In him was life, and that life was the light. Say light for me. Light of all mankind. Wow, what a statement, huh? The light of all mankind. And then verse 5 says, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. Light. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I'm running fast. He came only as a witness to the light. What if I ask you to describe somebody to me? Like, let's say, you ever had one of those conversations with somebody where you're like trying to tell them about a person, like maybe it's someone at church or maybe it's someone at work, and like, who are you talking about? And so then you're like, you have to describe them. Well, you know, the bald guy, or you're trying to find the right ways to, let's see, how can I describe them without, or you're like, the tall one, you're trying to find words to say, who describe this person? Oh, the one who works, and then maybe we'll throw out a profession, or maybe we'll throw out, something that we try to grab onto something like, how can I tell you about this person in such a way that you can understand? Oh, okay, that one, How many of you do that? Does that get uncomfortable? That gets hard, right? It's like, describe this person that I don't know. I don't know. And you try to fumble through things. And so the John chapter 1, this is when John, who writes the Gospel of John, is setting out to describe Jesus that he is going to write this entire book about. And he's trying to say, okay, so let me tell you about Jesus. Like, oh, okay, let me see. Like, how am I going to help you understand who Jesus is? And so he has these 3 really great descriptions that he uses to set that foundation before he goes and tells all the stories to reinforce it. First thing he says, he was the Word, and the Word was in the beginning, and the Word was with God, and it was God, and the same was with him. So he's like, Jesus, he is God. He was here from the beginning. He was there. He is the Word, the Creator, the one, the divine. So he says that. Then the second thing he describes Jesus as is here, what we just read. It says, he is the light that was the light for all of mankind. And then the third way he describes him, he says, he was the perfect balance of grace and truth put together. And so he lays that foundation for Jesus before he launches into the gospel. He is God, he's the Creator, he's the light, and he's the perfect balance of grace and truth. So today what I want to focus on is that middle one, that he is the light that brings life to all mankind. Now, we often see things happening in this world, but don't really recognize that light. When we were in Puerto Rico, we did, got to see a lot of amazing things. We would go to El Yunque, the rainforest, and just an amazing thing. And the water is perfect. You get to go and swim in the river that's flowing, or you get to go to a beach, and the beach is it's magnificent. It's beautiful, rock formations and water and sea life, and you get to see, oh wow, they're like 20 miles apart. You get to experience both of those, at the same time. You see just the people and how strong they are and how resilient they are to continue and how much hope and joy to move forward. And we see these things as lights. We see them as blessings. But it's very easy in our life to see these things come in and never really recognize the source of this. It's like when we see these beautiful places, even as you get to kind of look out of the windows here, Miami's a beautiful place. I mean, one of my favorite views is coming back off of Key Biscayne, and you just see the skyline and the water and all these things. We can see and experience so many things from God, and yet in our minds, never equate them to God communicating to us. We can say things like Mother Nature. And we look and we see the beauty of God's creation, from sunsets to mountains to beaches to just all kinds of things that just wow us and amaze us as you just sit there and you look at the vastness of the ocean. And sometimes in our minds we go, wow, Mother Nature. And we miss the opportunity to see what God is doing. We can look at resilience in people's lives and we can see, someone who can overcome something and we just think, wow, they're strong, wow, they're talented, wow, how do they have all these things? And we miss the giver of gifts, God who puts that light into them. It reminds me of kind of as a child. Think about when you were a kid, or some of you still are, but when you're a child, you get to experience things in life, but you don't realize really how they get there, right? You just know when you wake up, there's going to be breakfast. And it's going to be there, and it's supposed to be there, and you're going to have internet, right? You have to, and at some point, you're going to have a phone, and that's going to be given to you, and you're going to have a car, and you're going to go on vacations. And as a child, you get these things in life, and you just know they're going to be there because they're there. How many of you had like that adulting moment? What's that? #adulting, where you came to that place where you realized, the world wasn't free. It wasn't just provided for you. I remember having one of those, one of our early vacations. When I was a kid, we would go on vacation. I had 3 brothers, so it was 4 boys, and it would be my mom and dad in a station wagon. We'd go on vacation. I remember my dad was always so grumpy on vacations. It was vacation, but for him, it looked like it was the torture of life, And he was so grumpy on vacation. And as a kid, I didn't get it. I was like, oh man, my dad, what's the problem? We're here to go to Disney, and then one day I realized I was so grumpy on vacations as a dad, and because I realized, okay, once I began to pay for the vacations, then I realized, wait a second, I worked double before and after vacation, put it on a credit card to pay for it for 3 years, and all that stuff goes in your mind as an adult, and you lose the joy. You're not thinking, oh, this is a great memory for our family. You're thinking, oh, it's you move from that childlike, hey, this is it. It comes to me, and I enjoy it, and it's there. And then there's that moment where, as adults, you realize, I gotta work for this. I gotta, and there's a change of perspective that happens there. And what that kind of reminded me of is how I live in life, constantly receiving God's blessing as a child, but never really attributing it to God. To looking at the beauty of the world and just thinking, oh, wow, isn't nature beautiful? And not thinking, there's a God who created this for me to experience. How creative and imaginative is He to make all these varieties of things for us to enjoy? Think of this world that we want to explore, and some of you have had the chance to travel to just amazing places, and we go really just almost as an experience to consume and say, I was here, I saw this, I did this. But realize that God created that and formed that for us to enjoy His creativity. And I would miss that and not really see God working in it. Or you see things line up in your life. You see blessings come to you, and we say things like, good luck, or it worked out, just happened to be this way. And we attribute this divine working of God in our life. We forget to see God working and start saying things like, hey, I got lucky. Or we even say, man, I worked for that. I earned that. That's me. I worked on that. So-and-so gave me that. And we, like children who consume life but don't realize that a parent is providing that life constantly, we often have that same relationship with God as a child, where we're consuming life and never recognizing that this is a gift of God coming down, that this is something that God has created and prepared for us and is giving to us, and never having that heart of gratitude, or those eyes open to see this is God working in my life, but always just seeing it as, hey, this is my thing. And so, as I see in John chapter 1, this reminder that Christ is the light of all mankind. So when we look into this world and we see so much beauty and so much amazing things, and we see people who God has used to overcome things, to recognize that God works in people, to see that he is alive and real and moving today. These not just stories and scriptures from the past, but that today he's working in my life, in your life, to bring about change, to bring about life, to bring people, and that God is there, and to see him there in that. Colossians 1:15 says, the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things are created, things in heaven and on earth, visible, invisible, whether it's a throne or power or ruler or authority. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. There's nothing in our lives that we can't look to and see what God is doing. All things he holds together. Everything is there. And so John chapter 1 says in verse 9, the true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. You see, that's kind of the irony of being that child that receives, but never knowing where that comes from, what produces it, what creates it. He says, the creator of the world comes into the world, and those that he created didn't recognize him, didn't even see that this is what was going on. So, what I want to encourage for each of you, and what I had to look to for myself to tell me what, is that God is working in this world, and that I need to pay attention to it. That I need to be looking at life in that perspective, that God is in this world, and he is the light of all of mankind. So if there is light, does not turn out, then this is what God is doing here. That if there is light in your life, and that is what God is working in your life. And that if there is light in a situation where you see people overcoming and triumphing and working and bringing grace and goodness into something, then recognize that God is working here. And so, verse 12 says, yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Think of this concept, child of God. He doesn't use the word slave of God or even servant of God or creation of God, even though those could all be rightful terms. There's other times in the Bible where we all are said, you will be a slave to either one thing or the other. There are times in the Bible when God says you are a servant to what you serve. There are times in God's word when he does say, I am the potter, you're the clay. I'm the creator, you're the creation, so you fall under that authority. But in this instance, he uses the concept of child of God. And this really is the thing that resonates, I think, mostly with us, isn't it? To be a child of God, to be considered in the family, to see our place in this universe. Our identity always comes not just from who we are, but really who we are in relationship to other people. I know who I am because of how I relate to others. I know I'm a husband because I have a wife. I'm a father because I have children. I have a profession, and that profession is, this is my job, and that job exists because of how I relate in the community. All of these things we use to identify us really identify us in relationship to other people and help us to find our identity. There's a great song that says, I know who I am because of who you are. And so in our relationship with God, we learn to identify ourselves by seeing our standing before God. We're saying, this is who God is, and this is who I am in relationship to him. And he uses the concept of child. Child, because we are protected by God, because we need him, we need provision, we need protection, we need training, we need teaching, we need to be brought up, we need all of these things from God. And also because of love, because we need love, we need place. The idea connects so much with us. I got a picture of my family is here today. Thank you guys for being here. It's awesome. Now you're going to see them here. This is my wife and I. We have 2 boys. We have 2 sons, and they are mini me's of us. All right. So what you find when you have a child is that they become exactly like you, but not by training. Okay. So internally, the workings of my older son Isaac, he functions like I do. Like we have very similar personalities, thought processes, the way we manage to do things. And then our younger son, Isaiah, he is just like my wife. All of the ideas and expressions and things like that is something. Now, my wife and I didn't make an agreement that I get the first child and then she gets the next one. Like we didn't say, all right, so we're going to have 2 kids. The first one's yours, and you're going to create him, like you, and you're going to train him, and he's going to be like you, and then I'll make the next one like me. That agreement never came about, okay? But somehow, God, when he creates children, it puts in them not just things you could train, like a family could, hey, this is how we do things as a family, but there is this internal thing that they become like you internally. Even from the way they walk or think or act or something. How many of you have kids? How many of you see that? Is that true, or is my family weird? Is that the way it goes, or do we have some kind of weird robotic thing that we do? No, that's the way it goes, isn't it? That parents pass down into their children even things that they don't physically try to pass down. It's not as if we say, hey, this is some of the habits. You do that. You say, this is some of the habits and values we have in our home. We're going to pass that down. But somehow, even internal, the good and the bad of who you are comes back into your children too. And that's amazing from God. And what that reminds me of in our relationship with God is how he has brought us as his children. He is putting things in us that are of his character, that are of his making. In the garden, it says, I've created them in my own image. These values, and God puts those in you as a child of God. And then throughout the course of your life, he brings them out for you to see them. God has put his goodness within you, his mercy, his grace, his justice, his kindness, and his love. That you are a child of God, and he has put that character in you, and it comes out, doesn't it? It comes out in these moments when you have the opportunity to forgive. It comes out in these moments when you begin to serve. It comes out when you begin to see that there is a light in you that your Father has put that comes out when you realize that you are a child of God. And so he relates to us as that child because he has put something in us that he then brings out. And as you watch your children grow, right, you begin to see it more and more. And what happens when a child becomes an adult? You start to see, oh no, I'm doing things like my parents, things I never would have done. And I love those. What's that Geico that says you're going to be like your dad now, but you get that cheap insurance? Do you guys see those commercials? I love those commercials. You begin to see that maturing come out. And that's what God is doing in your life now. It's already placed in there in you, and as he reveals himself to you more and more, and as you open yourself up to the light to see that God is working in your life, calling you, teaching you, instructing you, you now can see the light that God has put in you, and you begin to grow in that, and you begin to see what it is. I think that's why we're so drawn to serving. When we go to Puerto Rico, we serve in the orphanages, and it's the most impactful thing. Because we all know that that's an unnatural thing for a child to be left alone, right? They should have parents. They should have parents. It's unjust for a child not to have someone loving and caring and taking care of it. We all know and feel that should be the case. And so when God talks to us about child, it's because he says, look, you are no longer orphans. You shouldn't be orphans. You shouldn't be lost. You shouldn't be out there alone, apart from God, not knowing whose child you are, what place you are. But you should know that you are a child of God. He created you. He loves you. He has a place for you. And he is teaching and he is growing you in him so that you understand who you are in God. It's unnatural for you not to be in relationship with God. It's unnatural. It's unjust for you to be separated from God. And so you must be drawn to him as a child of God. How many of you have watched The Lion King? The first time or the second time? Spoiler alert, okay? I'm going to ruin it for you. All right? No, I'm not. Well, maybe this. Watch it again, because when you watch it this time, I want you to see the closing picture through this perspective of John chapter 1, where you are, to as many as believe, he has made them children of God. So, Simba, in shame, runs away from his family, his tribe, and is out. He's gone. He spends all this time over here. And then what happens is they come to bring him back. They come to get him. To say, hey, you have a place in this. And it begins with a plea for responsibility, family, duty, what you should do. This is the right thing for you to do. And they present him with, this is the right thing. Your tribe needs you. Your family needs you. Your people need you. You're the king. You have to return. This is what? But he can't. He doesn't. In fact, he goes and he hides deeper because he doesn't think he's worthy to be a king. He looks at his mistake. He looks at failure. He looks at tragedy. He looks at darkness. And he's like, I am not worthy to be king. It's not until Rafiki, feels weird saying, it's not until at that moment that he is shown that he is the child of the king, that Mufasa, that he is the rightful king. It's not until he looks into the water and he sees a new identity, where he looks at his identity and says, this is who I am. I am the king. And when he realized his identity, he was able then to go and do the duty that he knew he should have been doing, because he now believed that he was a child, that he was in the family of the king. The same is in our relationship with God. We read and we know that there are things that we're supposed to do. For the most part, we know right and wrong. We know how we wish we could improve ourselves. We wish, we did this better or this, or we could start that. But that change in our life doesn't come about until we understand that we are children of God. Until we're able to rest in saying, you know what? I'm his child. He loves me. He created me. He's put his light in me. There's a light in me that will never turn out. There is something that God has for me to do. That's when we're empowered to go and do. John 1:12 says, to all who receive him, he gave the power to be children of God. So I invite you today to that power, to that light, to that position, to be children of God. He has called you to it. He has put himself in you. He is revealing himself to you. Let's pray. God, your word is sometimes so simple that we want to go past it. That you have called us children of God. So help us, Lord, to see ourselves that way. To not see ourselves as mistakes, failures, problems. Not to label ourselves by our sin, but to understand that our identity is in you. We were created by you and for you, and you sustain all things by your love and your power. So lift us up to that. Help us to be a light in this city that needs it so much. Help us to be a light in our home as we need each other. Lord, help us to rest in you. In Jesus' name.